Hey, what's up everyone? Hope you're all having a wonderful time. Here we have the Magic Find Pathfinder in Path of Exile. The Magic Find Pathfinder is really a tanky build to take full advantage of all the great perks from being the Pathfinder by using Flasks to mitigate damage and make ourselves basically immune to most things in the game. And this version is going to be focusing half on Magic Find while still being really tanky. And the great thing is that we're basically immortal when it comes through hits, but the degen is still something to look out for. But most of the times you can just lean back and relax and don't have to worry about anything. We're currently around 10 divines into the build, and I thought I'd share with you guys, even though you can pour in a lot more currency to really make full advantage of this build. At the moment we got elemental ailment immunity, curse, stun, corrupted blood, 100% spell suppress, full conversion from physical hits to elemental, and of course damage reduction from all of our flasks, and automated life recovery with permanent uptime on our flasks as well. Tons of stuff to make ourselves not having to worry about anything. Affliction has been a real gold mine when it comes to Magic Find by stacking a lot of wisps from the League mechanic and combining it with stuff like Abyss, Beyond and Delirium. And the goal I had with this character was to be able to do tier 14, 15 and 16 maps, so I also could take advantage of Eater of World for even more quantity and rarity bonuses, and it also works great, even though it might take a while for certain rare and bosses, depending on how much use you have in the map. The build damage is from dealing poisons, and by using a poison berry tincture will make it so all damage can poison, and this we get from using the Warden Ascendancy from the Affliction League. As all damage can poison, we can deal any damage type we want, and for this build we are stacking as much elemental damage as we can. The main damage ability is coming from the new version of Caustic Arrow, which is called Of Poison. From this we get 40% chance to poison, which helps early on the build, and also it makes it so we get flat chaos damage instead of damage over time as the normal version does. We're also using Lightning Arrow, Ice Shot and Storm Rain for even more damage, and also Frenzy for some Frenzy charge generation. Combine these with Manaforge Arrow support, which will trigger all of these skills once we spend enough mana from our main ability Caustic Arrow. And let's go over some of the items that we are using for this build, starting with Defiance of Destiny. And this amulet is another layer of defense for the build. We gain up to 35% of missing unreserved life before being hit by an enemy, and what it does is that we're basically immortal against small hits from this. For example, if we are at half our life, let's say from 4k, and if we get hit, we are going to get healed from this by 35% of 2k life before we take damage from the initial hit. And this can also be improved even further by applying Fertile Catalyst on the amulet as well. Another source of sustaining our life is to combine charges gain when we are hit, and also use when charges reach full on our flasks, and use the Flask Mastery in our passive tree, which recover 4% of life when we are using a flask for some extra life recovery. And here you can also get another 5% from the Which Was Taken jewel, but more about that later. Lightning Coil for its unique modifier, 50% of physical damage from hits taken as lightning damage. Really nice to have combining this with a Topaz Flask, which will make it so we take less lightning damage, 20% by default, and this is also buffed even more by all the flask effects. A Micro Distillery Belt is really good for the build, as we get 30% increased effect of flasks, but can't use flasks in our 5th slot. As we're using a tincture here, we can basically ignore the downside of the belt, and these do cost a bit though. The base is around 4 divines at the moment for the base alone, and it's going to be the most expensive part of this build. Highly recommend if you're planning on doing high tier maps, but a Perendus Blazon or Biscos Leash works here as well if you are doing low tier Magic Find. We're also using Gold Rim for 20% extra quantity, and also 2 Venturous Gamble for 10% quantity for each ring, with some rarity here as well. And for the rings, you don't have to get the perfect roll for this one. Try to get as much quantity and rarity as you can here, and just try to get all other stats on the positive side. Obviously we want to get capped on rest here, so keep that in mind, but we do get tons of that from our flasks, so you don't have to worry about it too much. And let's go over quickly the stats you want to focus on. Try to go for life, resist, mostly chaos resist here, spell suppress, flat damage, focus on elemental ones, damage over time multipliers, attack speed, increase flask effect and duration, and also strength and intelligence is also really good to get, as they are quite hard to come by on this build. And here we have a quick look on the passive skill tree. For more information, I do recommend you go and check out the POB for yourself. This will be linked in the description. For the Ascendancy, we are going with the Pathfinder, and first we have Master Toxicity. This basically spreads poison when you kill an enemy, and also have a 20% chance to deal 100% more damage with poison if we have a flask up. Nature's Reprisal give us a chance to inflict Wither for 2 seconds on hit, and also boost the effect by 50% of Wither. Nature's Adrenaline give us 3 flask charges every 3 seconds. And lastly, you will have 2 different choices to go for here. I went for Nature's Boon for 30% effect of magic utility flasks, and this will boost the damage taken from our Topaz Ruby flask, so we can take less damage from those elements and also get some extra move speed here from our Quicksilver. The other choice is that you go for Master Surgeon. Flask effects are not removed when unreserved life is filled, and this will make so we can have the Divination Distilled Flask, and this is used by all magic finders as it provides quantity and also rarity during the flask effect. And so what the Master Surgeon does is it makes it so we are able to have the flask up for its full duration, even if we are on full life and mana. You also get additional elemental resist here as well though, which is really nice, but the fact that you will have to press this once every 6 seconds or so to have it up make me not want to use it. Call me lazy, but there it is. You also will have to sacrifice either your stun or curse immunity that we get from the other flasks here as well. But if you want to go full magic fine, this is the way to go. And next for Affliction, Ascendancy, you went for Warden, and there's basically 2 nodes that you benefit from here. First is the Coated Blade, which will make it so we can use a tincture for the build, and the second one is going to be Nature's Concoction, and this gives the adjacent flask to the tincture 3 charges when we hit an enemy once every second, and also increase the effect of the flask here as well. And here we want to put our Quicksilver, as it has a really small downtime without this node, but with this we have full uptime while we are mapping and still are hitting enemies. If you are going with a full magic find, maybe consider putting your Divination Distilled Flask here for some extra quantity and rarity. And the reason we have our tincture in the 5th slot is because of the micro distillery belt. If you are playing without it, you can change the tincture's location and get benefit from 2 flasks instead. And let's take a look on our jewels here. The first and the only normal ones we are using is basically for the Corrupted Blood immunity. Here you want to go for life, attributes, resist, chaos damage, all work here as well. For the clusters, we're using one large one with damage to bows. Here we're using Temper Arrowhead, Martial Powers, which are good for this one. And we also got another one for Fuel the Fight as well. There are better ones, but this is the one I managed to craft and I just settled with it. For the medium cluster, you want one with increased flask effect and also with Spite Concoction for the Alchemist Genius here, which gives us 20% flask charges gain and also additional 10% flask effect for 4 seconds when we use a flask. Brood for potency is also good for this build for the damage over time and also some extra flask charges gain. Storm Shroud makes modifiers to chance to avoid being shocked, applies to all elemental ailments, so this is where we are getting that ailment immunity from. I'll go over this more later in the video. We're using one Thread of Hope with a large ring, which makes so we can pick all these passives within the ring without having them to be connected to the passive tree. This saves up tons of points for this build. That which was taken, my new favorite item in the game, takes modifiers from charms that was added from the Affliction League and randomized 2 prefix and suffix modifiers from those charms. And here it comes down to how big your budget really is. You can do some really nasty combos with this, but mainly I use this to get a huge stat boost as the build is in high demand of strength and intelligence. Chance for projectiles to chain when collided with terrain, also nice. Phasing on kill for some quality of life, and also the extra 4% recovery when we use a flask for even more survivability. Increased poison duration for each poison you have inflicted recently is also a really good one for this build, but then we also have to spend pretty much double that we already put into the build. Lastly, we're using a Watcher's Eye, and the most important modifier here is the physical damage taken as lightning while affected by Purity of Light. You can go with whatever element you want here, basically. You will then have to use the matching aura as well, of course. As we convert most lightning damage, I figure I just went for Purity of Lightning for this one. We also managed to get one with increased attack speed while affected by precision. For some other example, you can also go with life on hit while affected by vitality. Or if you are rich as hell, the damage over time multiplier while affected by malevolence also works really great here as well. And for the links of the build, let's start with Caustic Arrow here, and we link this with Mirage Archer, greater multiple projectiles, and multiple damage with attacks, vicious projectiles, and also item rarity. Next we're using Val Lightning Arrow and Eye Shot, combine this with Manaforge Arrow and just a Hex Touch with Despair setup. Storm Rain of Conduction with Life Tap, also Manaforge Arrow, and some extra item rarity. We're also using a Frenzy here, also with Manaforge Arrow. And as mentioned before, all of these will trigger once we spend enough mana here using Caustic Arrow. We have a Purity of Lightning and also Precision here, and these are for our Watcher's Eye to get the effects from those. Also, Purity of Lightning here will increase our maximum lightning resist, which is also really great, as the majority of our damage from physical hits is going to convert to lightning, so taking less lightning by having more maximum lightning resist is really great. Malevolence for some extra damage over time. We also have Vitality, helps a little bit with degen. Val Haste, and this is basically just for the Val version here, for attack speed, move speed. Flame Dash for some mobility, and Plague Barrier just for some extra damage against rare and bosses. For the flaws, let's start with the unique one, Taste of Hate, which will make it so a % of physical damage from hits taken as cold damage instead. With this current setup, we get 27% from the flask alone, so do focus on getting one with the max roll on it. Also, this is a Sapphire Flask, so some extra cold resist and also less cold damage taken from the base here as well. We're also using a Roby and also a Topaz Flask for the resist and the less damage taken for fire and lightning, and also a Quicksilver for some extra movement speed. You do want to gain charges when you are hit by an enemy with the enchant used when charges reach full on them, and as I mentioned earlier, and this is going to be combined with the Flask Mastery here, which will recover 4% of life when we use a flask for the extra automated life recovery here. You want to have one of the flasks with avoid being shocked during the effect, and this is going to be combined with the Storm Shroud Jewel. As we mentioned earlier, for the ailment immunity, getting one with at least 50% with this current setup is enough, as we get around 110% flask effect at the moment. You also want one with reduced effect of curses for curse immunity. And lastly, you also want one with avoid being stunned for the stun immunity. And as mentioned earlier, if you are planning on using the Divination Distilled Flask for the extra magic find, you will have to sacrifice one of them, either the curse or stun immunity. For a tincture, you want a poison berry base, so all damage can poison. For the suffix, we want to use the increased rarity of items dropped by slain enemies. And for the prefix, there are quite a few to choose from. Here we have Consecrated Ground on hit on rares and bosses, and this gives some life regen and also 50% reduced effect on curses, and this is going to be good to have if you're planning on using the Magic Find Flask. There's also hits inflict wither the buff on enemies that are on full life. There's also chance to inflict a grasping vine on hit, it's also really good. For the Pantheons, we're using the Soul of Ericale for extra reduction to damage taken from damage over time, as it is the thing that this build is not good against. Debuff expire faster and also some extra chaos resist here against damage over time. For the Miner, we are using Aberrath, and this is so we are unaffected by burning ground. And let's just go over some immunity of the build. First, corrupted blood from any jewel. Basically, from our Flasks we get stun, curse, and also all elemental ailment immunity by combining chance to avoid being shocked and the storm shroud jewel. For the poison cap, if you are uncertain on how you are on your build, you can check out your POB, and that you can do under calculations here. Then you can just pick a random skill up here, move down to poison, and here you can see all the chance that you have on your poison chance. If you are struggling on capping yourself, there's also 20% from using a Herald of Agony. There's also a 10% node on the poison tree just above the clusters, and you could even go and get it as an implicit on your gloves from Eater of World. Usually you want your last chance to poison on hit from the bow here, and this is also going to be usually the most annoying part to get for the build. Now you know that you have some other options until you get one of these bows. And for the conversion from physical hits to elemental, you can check them here as well, under calculation, and all the way down to damage taken, and then under physical here. And here you can see that we have 16% from our helm, we got 6 from the implicit, and also 10 from the suffix, 50 from lightning coil, 8 from our watcher's eye, and 27 from our taste of hate, making us at a total of 101, I believe, right now, so 1 over cap. Alright, so there we have the Magic Find Pathfinder in Path of Exile. Have you tried it out before or tried another version of it? Feel free to tell me in the comments below. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!